What is the most evil thing you have ever witnessed? I still remember the exact moment I realized I was working alongside a monster. It was 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in March, and 7-year-old Emma Martinez was crying in room 314. Not the quiet whimpering you'd expect from a brave little girl, this was raw, primal screaming that echoed down the pediatric oncology ward. Her mother, Maria, stood beside the bed clutching Emma's hand, tears streaming down her exhausted face. Please, she begged me in broken English, she hurt so much. The medicine, where is medicine? I checked Emma's chart for the third time that hour. She was scheduled for morphine every 4 hours, and it had been 6 since her last dose. The pain from her bone cancer must have been excruciating. I grabbed the medication keys and headed straight for head nurse Patricia Henley's office. Patricia, Emma Martinez needs her pain meds. She's way overdue, Anne. She's fine. Patricia didn't even look up from her paperwork. Her gray hair was pulled back in that severe bun she always wore, and her reading glasses reflected the computer screen. Children are dramatic. A little discomfort won't kill her. A little discomfort? She has stage 4 osteosarcoma. The tumors are literally eating her bones alive. Patricia finally looked at me, her cold blue eyes narrowing. Listen, Sarah. I've been doing this job since before you were born. These medications are expensive, we're talking $400 per dose. The hospital board is breathing down our necks about costs, and frankly, these children need to learn resilience. Suffering builds character. I stared at her in disbelief. She's 7 years old and dying. Which is exactly why we shouldn't be throwing money away on excessive comfort measures. The outcome is the same regardless. She turned back to her computer. Give her some acetaminophen and tell the mother to read her a story. That's sufficient. Acetaminophen for bone cancer pain. It would be like using a band-aid for a gunshot wound. I wanted to argue more, but Patricia held the keys to the medication lockbox, and as head nurse, she had final say over pain management protocols during night shifts. Hospital policy required her authorization for any controlled substances. I was trapped. Back in room 314, I had to face Maria's desperate eyes and explain that Emma would have to wait until the day shift supervisor arrived at 7 a.m. The look of betrayal on that mother's face still haunts me. She trusted us to care for her daughter, and we were failing in the most fundamental way possible. Emma screamed for another 3 hours and 47 minutes. I know because I timed it, checking on her every 15 minutes, holding her tiny hand and feeling completely helpless. When Dr. Roberts arrived that morning and immediately ordered proper pain relief, Emma finally fell into exhausted sleep. But Patricia's cruelty wasn't limited to Emma. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing a pattern. Kids in rooms 308, 315, and 322, all the terminal cases, were consistently receiving delayed or reduced pain medication under Patricia's watch. Meanwhile, the less critical patients in private rooms whose families had good insurance somehow never seemed to experience these shortages. 10-year-old Michael Chen with leukemia. 5-year-old Isabella Thompson with brain tumors. 12-year-old David Park whose spine cancer left him bedridden. All suffering needlessly under Patricia's twisted philosophy while their parents begged us for help we were forbidden to provide. That's when I realized I had two choices: stay silent and become complicit in torturing innocent children, or find a way to stop her. I chose to fight back. The first thing I needed was proof. Patricia had been at St. Mary's Children's Hospital for 18 years, she knew exactly how to work the system and cover her tracks. If I was going to take down someone with that much seniority and institutional protection, I needed ironclad evidence. I started small. Every night Patricia worked, I began documenting everything in a pocket notebook I kept hidden in my scrubs. Patient names, scheduled medication times, actual administration times, Patricia's exact words when denying or delaying treatment. I noted which families she seemed to target, almost exclusively those who spoke limited English or were on Medicaid. 3 weeks into my covert investigation, I discovered something that made my stomach drop. I was restocking supplies in the medication room when I noticed discrepancies in our morphine inventory. According to the computer system, we should have had 12 vials. I counted only 7. The OxyContin was also short, by nearly 30 pills. My hands trembled as I cross-referenced the missing medications with Patricia's shift reports. On paper, she'd documented giving these drugs to patients. But I knew she hadn't. I'd been watching her refuse those same children pain relief for hours at a time. So where were the drugs going? The answer came 2 nights later when I stayed late to finish paperwork. Most of the staff had gone home, and I thought I was alone when I heard Patricia's voice coming from the supply closet near the elevator. She was on her phone, speaking in hushed tones. No, I can't get you the fentanyl patches yet, she was saying. Security's been doing random inventory checks. But I've got 40 oxy pills and 6 morphine vials. Same price as usual. My blood ran cold. She wasn't just withholding medication from dying children out of some twisted philosophy about character building. She was stealing it and selling it for profit. I pressed myself against the wall outside the closet, my heart pounding so loud I was sure she'd hear it. Meet me at the usual spot tomorrow at 2 a.m., Patricia continued. Bring cash. And remember, if anyone asks, you don't know me. The call ended, and I heard her footsteps approaching. I barely made it back to the nurse's station before she emerged, her face a mask of calm professionalism. She nodded at me curtly and headed toward the pediatric wing, probably to continue her rounds of calculated cruelty. I sat there shaking, processing what I'd just learned. Patricia wasn't just denying pain relief to vulnerable children, she was literally stealing their medication and selling it on the black market. These kids were suffering in agony so she could make extra money. The next morning, I did something that could have cost me my job. I accessed Patricia's employee file during a brief moment when the day supervisor stepped away from her unlocked computer. What I found there painted an even darker picture. Patricia's financial disclosure forms showed she'd recently paid off her mortgage and bought a new BMW, this despite her $78,000 annual salary and her ex-husband's ongoing alimony payments. Her bank account should have been stretched thin, not flush with extra cash. I also discovered 2 formal complaints filed against her in the past 5 years. Both involved families accusing her of inadequate pain management for their children. Both complaints had been dismissed after Patricia provided documentation showing she'd followed proper protocols. Documentation I now knew was falsified. As I closed the files and logged out, one thought kept echoing in my mind. How many children had suffered while Patricia built her little drug-dealing empire? How long had this been going on? And most importantly, how many more kids would endure unnecessary agony if I didn't find a way to stop her? I needed help, but I also needed to be careful. Patricia had powerful allies in hospital administration. One wrong move could destroy my case and my career. But those children deserved justice, even if it meant risking everything. That night, I made a decision that would either save lives or destroy my career. I needed concrete evidence, and the only way to get it was to catch Patricia in the act. I started by befriending Jenny Walsh, a newer night shift nurse who worked the opposite rotation from me. During our brief overlap periods, I carefully probed about her experiences with Patricia's medication protocols. What I learned made my stomach churn. God, I hate working her shifts, Jenny confided during a coffee break in early April. Last Tuesday, she made me tell the Gonzalez family that we were out of liquid morphine for their daughter. But Sarah, I saw at least 8 vials in the lockbox that morning. When I questioned her about it, she wrote me up for insubordination. Jenny's voice dropped to a whisper. And don't get me started on what happened to Marcus Thompson last month. 9 years old, bone marrow transplant complications, screaming in pain for 6 straight hours because Patricia said his previous dose should have been sufficient. His parents threatened to sue, but somehow the documentation showed he received medication on schedule. I know that's impossible because I was there. He got nothing until Dr. Martinez arrived and raised hell. I felt a mix of relief and rage. Relief that I wasn't imagining things, rage that this pattern of abuse was so widespread. Have you reported any of this? Jenny laughed bitterly. To who? Patricia's been here since the hospital opened. She golf buddies with Director Coleman's wife. She donated $50,000 to the new pediatric wing last year. Meanwhile, I'm still paying off nursing school loans and living paycheck to paycheck. Who do you think they believe? That conversation confirmed what I'd suspected. Patricia had systematically intimidated the junior staff into silence while building an untouchable reputation with administration. But everyone has weaknesses, and I was determined to find hers. My breakthrough came from an unexpected source, the hospital's own security system. During a particularly busy shift, I noticed something odd about Patricia's bathroom breaks. She'd disappear for exactly 12 minutes, always between 1:30 and 2 a.m., always carrying her oversized purse. The timing was suspicious enough that I decided to track her movements. St. Mary's had security cameras throughout the building, except in patient rooms and bathrooms, for privacy reasons. But the hallways were monitored, and those feeds were stored for 30 days before being deleted. I convinced my cousin Derek, who worked in hospital IT, to help me access the archived footage. I told him I was investigating potential medication theft, which was technically true, just not through official channels. This is seriously risky, Sarah, Derek warned as he pulled up the security interface on his laptop. If anyone finds out I showed you this. I understand. But Derek, children are being hurt. I need to know where she goes during those breaks. The footage revealed Patricia's pattern with disturbing clarity. Every night she worked, she'd leave the pediatric wing at exactly 1:47 a.m., take the elevator to the parking garage sublevel, spend 8 minutes in what appeared to be the northwest stairwell, a dead zone between camera angles, then return to her station by 2:03 a.m. What the hell is she doing down there for 8 minutes? Derek muttered, watching her disappear into the camera blind spot for the 4th time that week. I had a sinking feeling I knew exactly what she was doing. Can you check if any other people enter that stairwell area during those same time frames? Derek's fingers flew across the keyboard, cross-referencing timestamps. His face went pale. Sarah, look at this. Every night Patricia goes down there, this gray sedan pulls into parking spot B47. Someone gets out, goes to the same stairwell, leaves 8 minutes later, and drives away. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen. We were watching drug deals happen in real time, transactions funded by the suffering of dying children. Derek, I need copies of all this footage. And I need you to keep monitoring her pattern. Can you do that? He nodded grimly. For those kids? Absolutely. As I walked home that morning, I realized I'd crossed a line. I wasn't just documenting Patricia's crimes anymore, I was actively investigating them. If she discovered what I was doing, she'd find a way to have me fired, discredited, maybe even arrested on false charges. But I'd also realized something else. I wasn't fighting this battle alone. Over the next 2 weeks, I started building a network of allies who were just as disgusted by Patricia's behavior as I was. Jenny introduced me to Carlos Mendez, a night custodian who'd been at St. Mary's for 12 years. During his rounds cleaning the medication storage areas, he'd noticed the same inventory discrepancies I had. Miss Sarah, he told me one evening as we stood in the supply closet, I know I'm just the cleaning guy, but I got eyes. Last Thursday, I watched Nurse Patricia take 5 morphine vials from this cabinet at 11 p.m. But when I came back at 3 a.m., her logbook said she used 8 vials on patients. The math, it don't work. Carlos had been keeping his own informal tally of missing medications for months, scribbling notes on the back of his work orders. His broken English couldn't hide his sharp mind for numbers, and his records corroborated everything I'd documented. Why haven't you reported this? I asked. He shook his head sadly. Who gonna believe Carlos? I got no education, no papers to prove I'm smart enough to notice these things. But those babies crying at night, it breaks my heart. If you're trying to help them, I help you. By mid-April, I had 5 staff members willing to testify about Patricia's medication withholding: Jenny, Carlos, respiratory therapist Amanda Liu, and 2 other night nurses, Rebecca Santos and Michael Torres. But I knew witness testimony alone wouldn't be enough to bring down someone with Patricia's connections. I needed to catch her red-handed. The opportunity came on April 22nd, when I learned Patricia had volunteered to work a double shift due to staffing shortages. 16 hours meant 2 separate drug deals, her usual 2 a.m. transaction, plus likely another during her dinner break around 6 p.m. I convinced Derek to monitor the security feeds live that day while I worked my regular shift. The plan was simple: document everything, get photos if possible, and finally have concrete proof of her criminal activity. What I discovered was far worse than I'd imagined. At 6:17 p.m., Patricia made her first trip to the parking garage. Derek tracked her through the cameras while I watched from the pediatric ward as she told Marcus Williams' parents that their son would have to wait until morning for his next dose of pain medication. Marcus had just undergone spinal tumor surgery that afternoon. The agony must have been unbearable. Through our walkie-talkie system, Derek confirmed Patricia met with the same gray sedan driver, exchanging a small package for what appeared to be cash. The entire transaction lasted 9 minutes. But when Patricia returned to the ward, something had changed in her demeanor. She seemed paranoid, constantly checking over her shoulder, and she made 3 separate trips to the security desk to chat with the guards. Sarah, Derek's voice crackled through my earpiece at 1:45 a.m. We have a problem. Patricia just stopped at security and asked about accessing archived footage. She's asking questions about who has clearance to view the cameras. My blood went cold. Had someone tipped her off? Had she noticed my unusual interest in her schedule? Derek, copy everything we have right now. All the footage, all the timestamps. If she's onto us, we might not get another chance. Already on it. But Sarah, there's something else. I've been tracking that gray sedan's license plate through the parking system. It belongs to Vincent Vinny Torino. That name mean anything to you? I nearly dropped my walkie-talkie. Everyone in the city knew that name. Vinny Torino was a mid-level drug dealer who'd been arrested 6 times but never convicted thanks to expensive lawyers and convenient witness disappearances. If Patricia was selling to him, this wasn't some small-time side hustle. She was connected to serious criminals. Derek, we're in over our heads. This is organized crime level stuff. Which means those kids aren't just victims of a greedy nurse, they're victims of an actual drug trafficking operation. As I processed this revelation, 8-year-old Lisa Chen started crying in room 309. Her leukemia treatment had left her in constant pain, and she was scheduled for morphine at 2 a.m. Patricia emerged from her office, checked the medication log, and walked straight past Lisa's room without stopping. I watched Lisa's parents take turns holding their daughter, whispering soothing words in Mandarin while she sobbed. Her tiny body was so frail from chemotherapy that every breath seemed to cause pain. That image, those desperate parents helplessly watching their child suffer while Patricia's stolen morphine sat in Vinny Torino's car somewhere in the city, crystallized everything for me. This wasn't just about exposing one corrupt nurse anymore. I was documenting evidence of a criminal enterprise that was literally torturing dying children for profit. And tomorrow, I was going to start tearing it down. The next morning brought the kind of complication I'd been dreading. I was reviewing my documentation in the hospital cafeteria when Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, the chief of pediatric oncology, slid into the seat across from me. Sarah, we need to talk. My heart hammered against my ribs as I closed my notebook. Dr. Morrison was Patricia's biggest supporter in the medical staff. She'd publicly praised Patricia's cost-effective pain management protocols at 3 separate department meetings. Of course, Dr. Morrison. What can I help you with? Her steel gray eyes studied my face intently. I've been hearing some concerning rumors about staff members questioning our established medication procedures. As you know, Patricia has implemented evidence-based protocols that have saved this hospital over $200,000 in pharmaceutical costs this year alone. I forced my expression to remain neutral. I'm not sure what you mean. I think you do. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Patricia mentioned that you've been asking unusual questions about medication schedules. She's also noticed other staff members seem agitated lately during her shifts. As someone who's worked closely with Patricia for 8 years, I can assure you that any concerns about her methods are misguided. The threat was clear, but something in Dr. Morrison's tone made me pause. There was a tightness around her eyes, a forced quality to her defense of Patricia that seemed almost rehearsed. Dr. Morrison, can I ask you something honestly? Have you actually observed Patricia's pain management protocols firsthand during night shifts? For just a moment, her composure cracked. The day shift reports indicate proper medication administration. Patricia's documentation is always meticulous. But you haven't seen her work at night, have you? She stood abruptly, smoothing down her white coat. Sarah, I'm going to give you some advice as someone who values your nursing skills. Patricia Henley is untouchable at this hospital. Director Coleman considers her family. The board views her as a model of fiscal responsibility. If you're thinking of challenging her methods, you'll find yourself looking for a new job very quickly. After she left, I sat there processing what had just happened. Dr. Morrison's warning wasn't just about protecting Patricia, it was about protecting herself. If Patricia went down, anyone who'd endorsed her protocols would face serious scrutiny. That afternoon, I made a decision that terrified me. I called my older brother Jake, who worked as an investigative journalist for the Tribune. If this conspiracy reached as high as I suspected, I needed someone outside the hospital system to help expose it. Sarah, what you're describing sounds like a RICO case, Jake said after I'd outlined everything over coffee at his apartment. If Patricia's connected to Vinny Torino's organization, the feds would be very interested. But you need more than security footage and witness testimony. You need financial records, communication logs, something that directly ties her profits to the stolen medications. How am I supposed to get that kind of evidence? I'm a nurse, not a detective. Jake pulled out his laptop and opened what looked like a database search. You said Patricia recently paid off her mortgage and bought a new BMW, right? Financial disclosure forms are public record for hospital employees. But more importantly, if she's dealing with Torino's crew, she's probably not reporting this income to the IRS. His fingers flew across the keyboard as he accessed various public databases. Here's something interesting. Patricia Henley, 52, employed at St. Mary's Children's Hospital. She claimed $78,000 in income last year, but according to property records, she paid off a $340,000 mortgage in February and purchased a $65,000 vehicle in March. Even with her divorce settlement, those numbers don't add up. I stared at the screen in amazement. So she's committing tax evasion on top of everything else? Almost certainly. But Sarah, if I'm going to run this story, I need you to get me something concrete. A recording of her making a deal, photos of the exchange, something undeniable. That night, I returned to work with a tiny digital recorder Jenny had borrowed from her journalism student roommate. The device was smaller than a thumb drive and could capture clear audio from 15 feet away. At 1:43 a.m., Patricia made her usual excuse about checking inventory and headed for the elevator. I waited 30 seconds, then followed her route to the parking garage stairwell. My hands shook as I positioned myself in the shadows near the emergency exit, close enough to hear but hidden behind a concrete pillar. At exactly 2:01 a.m., I heard footsteps echoing in the stairwell, followed by Patricia's voice. "You're late, Eddie. Traffic was hell. You got the stuff?" 6 morphine vials, 42 OxyContin pills, and 15 fentanyl patches. That's $2,800 worth at street value. Vinny says the fentanyl patches are moving real good with his regulars. Can you get more next week? Patricia's laugh made my skin crawl. These terminal kids don't need comfort measures anyway. Half of them won't make it to summer. Might as well put their medications to profitable use. I pressed the recorder closer to the wall, making sure it captured every word of their negotiation. For 12 minutes, I listened to Patricia casually discuss which children's pain medications she could steal next, treating their suffering like a business opportunity. When they finally parted ways, I stayed hidden until Patricia's footsteps faded completely. Then I stumbled back to the pediatric ward, where Marcus Williams was crying softly in room 312, his parents holding his hands while he waited for morning pain relief that should have been administered hours ago. The morphine that could have eased his suffering was now in Eddie's car, heading toward Vinny Torino's distribution network. But finally, I had the proof I needed to destroy them all. The next few days were a nightmare of close calls and mounting paranoia. Every time Patricia looked in my direction, I was convinced she knew about the recording. Every conversation with hospital administration felt like a potential trap. But I kept reminding myself of the children's faces, Marcus, Emma, little Lisa Chan, and pushed forward with my plan. My first priority was getting the evidence to safety. I made 3 copies of the recording and security footage, storing them in separate locations, one with Jake, one in a safety deposit box at my bank, and one hidden in my apartment. If Patricia or her criminal associates tried to silence me, the truth would still come out. On April 28th, I finally gathered enough courage to approach someone inside the hospital system who might actually listen. Dr. James Patterson was the new chief medical officer, hired just 6 months ago specifically to clean up St. Mary's financial irregularities. Unlike the established staff, he had no loyalty to Patricia and no investment in protecting the status quo. I requested a private meeting under the pretense of discussing concerns about medication protocols in pediatric oncology. Dr. Patterson agreed to see me during his lunch break, away from the main administrative offices. "Dr. Patterson," I began, my voice steadier than I felt, "I have evidence of systematic medication theft and patient abuse occurring during night shifts in the pediatric ward." His eyebrows shot up. "That's a very serious accusation, Nurse Chen. I hope you understand the implications of what you're suggesting." "I do. Which is why I spent 3 months documenting everything before coming to you." I slid a folder across his desk containing transcripts of the recorded conversation, time-stamped photos from the security footage, and witness statements from 5 staff members. Dr. Patterson read in silence for nearly 10 minutes, his expression growing darker with each page. Finally, he looked up at me with a mixture of horror and disbelief. "Head nurse Henley has been selling stolen medications to known drug dealers while terminally ill children suffer without adequate pain management?" "Yes, sir. And based on her financial records, this has been going on for at least 2 years, possibly longer." He stood abruptly and began pacing behind his desk. "Sarah, do you understand what this means for the hospital? If this becomes public, we could face federal investigations, massive lawsuits, loss of accreditation. The damage to our reputation alone could shut down the entire pediatric program." My heart sank as I realized Dr. Patterson's primary concern wasn't the suffering children, it was protecting the hospital's image. "Dr. Patterson, with all due respect, our reputation should be the least of our concerns right now. Patricia Henley is torturing dying children for profit. Every night she works, kids are screaming in agony while their stolen medications get sold on the street." "I'm not disagreeing with you," he said quickly. "But we need to handle this carefully. If we move too fast or make accusations we can't prove in court, Patricia could destroy evidence and claim she's being framed by disgruntled employees." He sat back down and pulled out a legal pad. "Here's what we're going to do. I'm immediately implementing random medication audits during all shifts, starting tonight. I'm also having our security director review all camera footage from the past 60 days. If your allegations are correct, we'll have overwhelming evidence within a week. Dr. Patterson, children are suffering right now. Tonight. Patricia is scheduled to work a 12-hour shift starting at 7 p.m. How many kids will be denied pain relief while we're gathering more evidence we already have?" His face softened slightly. "I understand your frustration, Sarah. But if we want to ensure Patricia never works in healthcare again, anywhere, we need to build an airtight case. Give me 1 week to coordinate with legal and security. Then we'll move decisively." I left that meeting with mixed feelings. Dr. Patterson seemed genuinely committed to stopping Patricia, but his methodical approach meant more children would suffer while bureaucratic wheels turned slowly. That night, I watched Patricia deny medication to 11-year-old Jessica Park, whose brain tumor surgery had left her in constant agony. Jessica's parents spoke limited English and didn't understand why their daughter couldn't receive the pain relief her doctor had ordered. Through tears, they kept asking me why she hurt so much. Why no medicine? I had to explain through a translator that there were protocol delays while Patricia's stolen morphine sat in her purse, waiting for Eddie's 2 a.m. pickup. But this time, I knew help was finally coming. In 6 days, Patricia would face justice. The question was whether I could survive that long without breaking down completely from watching her torture innocent children night after night. What I didn't know was that Patricia had already begun suspecting something was wrong, and she was about to make a move that would force my hand much sooner than planned. The first sign that Patricia suspected something came on Monday night when I found her standing at my locker at 11:47 p.m., casually flipping through what looked like employment records. "Oh, Sarah," she said without a trace of embarrassment, "I was just reviewing staff schedules. Dr. Morrison mentioned you've been asking questions about our medication protocols." My blood turned to ice, but I forced myself to act normal. "Just trying to make sure I understand proper procedures. I'm still relatively new to pediatric oncology." Patricia's cold blue eyes studied my face intently. "Yes, 18 months now, isn't it? Tell me, have you been satisfied with your position here? Some nurses find the emotional demands overwhelming." The threat was barely veiled. "I love working with the children. It's exactly where I want to be." She closed the folder and tucked it under her arm. "Well, just remember that teamwork is essential in this environment. Nurses who don't support established protocols often find themselves reassigned to less desirable units. The psychiatric ward is always looking for night shift staff. After she walked away, I realized she'd been looking at my personnel file, my background check, probably my emergency contacts. Patricia was building a profile on me, trying to figure out what kind of threat I posed and how to neutralize it. 2 nights later, things escalated dramatically. I was checking on 12-year-old Anthony Rodriguez in room 318 when I heard Jenny's voice from the hallway, shaky and desperate. "I don't know what you're talking about, Patricia." "I would never." "Don't lie to me," Patricia hissed. "Someone has been asking very specific questions about medication inventory. Security told me there have been unusual computer access patterns, people logging in during off hours to check pharmaceutical records." My heart hammered as I pressed myself against Anthony's doorframe, listening to the confrontation just outside his room. "Jenny, you're new here, so maybe you don't understand how things work," Patricia continued, her voice dripping with false concern. "But nurses who make trouble for senior staff often discover that their references become unreliable when they try to find new positions. It would be such a shame if you couldn't work in pediatrics anymore." "I haven't done anything wrong," Jenny whispered, but I could hear the fear in her voice. "Of course you haven't. I'm just saying that loyalty is important in this profession. Very important." After Patricia's footsteps faded down the corridor, I found Jenny in the supply closet, crying silently while she restocked 4 bags. "She knows," Jenny whispered when she saw me. "Maybe not everything, but she knows someone's been watching her. Sarah, I'm terrified. I need this job. My mom's medical bills are killing me, and if Patricia blackballs me from pediatric nursing." I put my hand on her shoulder, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. "Jenny, Dr. Patterson is already investigating. We just need to hold on for a few more days. What if she figures out it's you? What if she—" Jenny's eyes widened as footsteps approached the supply closet. The door opened, revealing Patricia's silhouette against the hallway lights. "Ladies, is everything all right in here?" "Just restocking," I managed to say. Jenny was helping me find the pediatric 4 catheters. Patricia stepped into the small space, forcing us to back against the shelves. The closet suddenly felt claustrophobic, her presence filling the air with menace. "You know, Sarah, I've been thinking about our conversation the other night. About proper procedures." Her voice was silk over steel. "I realize I may have been unclear about certain expectations for night shift staff." She moved closer, and I caught a whiff of her perfume mixed with something else, the antiseptic smell that clung to all of us, but on her it seemed sinister. "Let me be very clear now. The protocols I've established have saved this hospital hundreds of thousands of dollars. The board of directors has personally commended my work. Dr. Morrison considers me irreplaceable." Patricia's eyes bored into mine. Anyone who threatens that arrangement would be making a very serious mistake. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Patricia, I'm not sure what you think." "What I think," she interrupted, "is that everyone needs to remember their place in this hospital's hierarchy. Night shift nurses are replaceable. Head nurses with 18 years of exemplary service are not." She stepped back toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Sarah? I'll be implementing some new security measures for our medication storage. Only senior staff will have access during overnight hours. I hope you understand." As she left, I realized Patricia had just cut off my ability to document her theft. Worse, she was clearly preparing to frame someone else for the missing medications, most likely me or Jenny. The trap was closing, and I was running out of time. That same night, my worst fears were realized when I discovered Patricia had already begun implementing her revenge. At 3:17 a.m., I was called to the medication room by Janet Hughes, the day shift supervisor who'd come in early to handle an emergency admission. Her face was grim as she gestured toward the open lockbox. "Sarah, we're missing 2 morphine vials and a package of fentanyl patches from last night's inventory. The computer logs show the last access was at 1:43 a.m. using your employee ID." My stomach dropped. "Janet, I never accessed the medication lockbox last night. Patricia has the only key during night shifts. She's required to be present for all controlled substance withdrawals. That's not what the electronic logs show." Janet pulled up the computer screen, and there it was, my employee number, my name, timestamped at exactly the time Patricia made her usual trip to meet Eddie in the parking garage. "Someone's using my access code," I said, my voice rising with panic. "Janet, you have to believe me." "I would never." "Sarah, calm down." But her tone had shifted from concern to suspicious. "The system requires both an ID card swipe and a personal PIN code. Are you saying someone stole both?" I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Patricia must have watched me enter my PIN at some point, maybe through the medication room security camera. With her administrative access, she could have easily cloned my ID card. "Janet, head nurse Henley has been." "Has been what?" Patricia's voice came from behind me, and I spun around to find her standing in the doorway with Dr. Morrison. "How long had they been listening?" "There seems to be a discrepancy in our controlled substance inventory," Janet explained. "Sarah's access code was used to withdraw medications that can't be accounted for in patient records." Patricia's expression was perfectly crafted, surprised, concerned, disappointed. "Oh my. Sarah, this is very serious. Federal regulations require immediate reporting of any missing controlled substances." "I didn't take anything," I said desperately. "Dr. Morrison, you have to check the security cameras. They'll show I never entered this room at 1:43 a.m. Dr. Morrison exchanged a meaningful look with Patricia. Unfortunately, there was a malfunction with the medication room camera last night. IT is still trying to recover the footage. Of course there was. Patricia had thought of everything. "Sarah," Patricia said softly, placing what looked like a concerned hand on my shoulder, "I know the stress of pediatric oncology can be overwhelming. Sometimes good nurses make poor choices when they're struggling emotionally or financially. If you're having problems, there are counseling resources available." The manipulation was masterful. In 30 seconds, she painted me as an unstable drug thief while positioning herself as a caring mentor trying to help a troubled employee. "I want to speak with Dr. Patterson," I said firmly. "Dr. Patterson is in surgery until this afternoon," Dr. Morrison replied. "But Sarah, I think you should take the rest of the week off while we sort this out. Paid administrative leave, of course, pending the investigation." My heart sank. Administrative leave meant I'd be banned from the hospital during the crucial days when Dr. Patterson was supposed to be gathering evidence. Patricia would have free rein to destroy any remaining proof while painting me as a disgruntled employee trying to frame her. Dr. Morrison, please. Just give me 24 hours to. Sarah, you're clearly upset. Patricia's voice dripped with false sympathy. Why don't you go home and rest? Janet will handle the incident report, and we'll have security review everything thoroughly. As I was escorted from the building by a security guard, I caught a glimpse of 8-year-old Maria Santos crying in room 315. Her parents were clustered around her bed, and I could hear her whimpering even from the hallway. She was scheduled for pain medication at 4 a.m., but with me gone and Patricia now controlling the narrative, would she even receive it? Walking to my car in the pre-dawn darkness, I realized Patricia had outmaneuvered me completely. She'd neutralized the investigation, discredited my testimony, and ensured her protection by framing me for her crimes. But she'd also made one crucial mistake. She'd pushed me past the point where I cared about hospital politics or my nursing career. If the system wouldn't protect those children, I'd have to find another way to save them. I called Jake from my car before I even left the hospital parking lot, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. She set me up, I said the moment he answered. Patricia framed me for stealing medications. I'm on administrative leave and they're treating me like a criminal. Slow down, Sarah. Tell me exactly what happened. I explained the forged access logs, the convenient camera malfunction, Dr. Morrison's obvious complicity. When I finished, Jake was quiet for a long moment. This is actually good news, he finally said. Good news? Jake, my career is over. Patricia wins and those kids keep suffering while. No, listen. She's panicking. People who are confident in their position don't manufacture evidence against their accusers. She's making desperate moves, which means she's vulnerable. I could hear typing in the background. I've been digging into Patricia's connections while you were gathering evidence. What I found is bigger than we thought. My blood chilled. How much bigger? Remember Director Coleman? Patricia's golf buddy who's supposedly been protecting her. I found campaign finance records showing Coleman received $15,000 in donations from Torino family enterprises over the past 3 years. That's Vinny's legitimate business front. I sat in stunned silence as the implications hit me. You're saying hospital administration is connected to organized crime? I'm saying there's a money trail that leads from drug dealers to hospital executives. Patricia isn't just a rogue nurse, she's part of a larger operation. Jake's voice grew urgent. Sarah, you can't go home tonight. If they're willing to frame you for federal drug charges, they might escalate to protect their operation. Terror shot through me. What are you saying? I'm saying Vinny Torino's crew doesn't leave loose ends. Pack a bag and get somewhere public with lots of witnesses. I'm calling my contact at the FBI. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in a 24-hour diner on Highway 9, my nursing bag and a hastily packed suitcase in the booth beside me. Every time the door chimed, my heart raced, expecting to see Patricia or one of Torino's men. At 6:47 a.m., a tall woman in a gray pantsuit approached my table. Sarah Chen? I'm Agent Patricia Reyes, FBI Financial Crimes Division. Your brother contacted us about organized crime infiltration at St. Mary's Hospital. Relief flooded through me as she showed her credentials and slid into the opposite booth. Agent Reyes, I have recordings of Patricia Henley selling stolen medications to Vince and Torino's dealers. We know. We've been investigating Torino's prescription drug operation for 8 months. What we didn't have was inside access to his hospital source. She pulled out a tablet and showed me surveillance photos of Eddie meeting with Patricia in the parking garage. We'd been watching these exchanges, but we needed evidence connecting the stolen medications to specific patients. My hands trembled as I realized how close I'd come to disaster without knowing it. So you know about the children being denied pain medication? Agent Reyes' expression hardened. We suspected, but your documentation proves it. Sarah, what Patricia and her associates have done to those children qualifies as federal conspiracy to commit child abuse. The drug trafficking charges are just the beginning. She leaned forward intently. Here's what's going to happen. We're executing search warrants simultaneously at the hospital, Patricia's home, and 3 Torino properties at 8 a.m. sharp. But we need you to help us with something first. Anything. Patricia called in sick this morning, first time in 2 years according to hospital records. She knows something's wrong and she's probably destroying evidence. We need her to incriminate herself one more time before she lawyers up completely. Agent Reyes placed a small recording device on the table. Would you be willing to call her and arrange a meeting? Make her think you want to negotiate, maybe offer to keep quiet in exchange for money? If she admits to framing you or references the drug sales, we'll have everything we need. I stared at the device, thinking of Marcus Williams crying through the night while his stolen morphine sat in Patricia's purse. Of little Emma Martinez begging her mother for pain relief that never came. Of every child who'd suffered while Patricia built her criminal empire. Yes, I said firmly. Let's end this. The phone call to Patricia was scheduled for 9:15 a.m., after the FBI raids were already in progress. Agent Reyes wanted her panicked and desperate when I reached out, more likely to make mistakes. Remember, Agent Reyes coached me as we tested the recording equipment in the FBI field office. You're scared, you feel betrayed, but you're willing to make a deal. Let her think she's manipulating you into silence. My hand shook as I dialed Patricia's number. She answered on the second ring, her voice tight with stress. Sarah? Why are you calling me? Patricia, we need to talk. Something's happening at the hospital. There are federal agents everywhere, and Dr. Patterson is asking questions about both of us. A long pause. What kind of questions? About missing medications. About my access codes being used. Patricia, I know what you did to me, but I also know. I took a shaky breath, selling the performance. I know about your arrangement with Eddie. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. Where are you? Starbucks on 5th Street. Patricia, I don't want any trouble. I just want this to go away. Stay there. Don't talk to anyone else. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Agent Reyes smiled grimly as I ended the call. Perfect. She's coming because she thinks she can either buy your silence or eliminate you as a threat. Either way, she'll have to acknowledge the crimes. 15 minutes later, I sat alone in the coffee shop with a wire taped to my chest and FBI agents positioned throughout the surrounding block. When Patricia walked in, she looked like she'd aged 10 years overnight. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, her makeup hastily applied. "Sarah," she said, sliding into the chair across from me, "you look terrible. This whole situation must be so stressful for you." Even now, she was trying to manipulate me. "Patricia, they're saying I stole medications worth thousands of dollars. My nursing license could be revoked. I could go to prison." "That would be unfortunate," she said carefully. "But you know, sometimes these investigations get complicated. Evidence can be misinterpreted." "What do you mean?" Patricia leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Sarah, you're young. You made some poor choices, got in over your head financially. Maybe you took a few pills here and there, sold them to make ends meet. It happens more than you think." I forced tears into my eyes. "But I never took anything." "You know I didn't." "Do I?" Her cold smile returned. "The computer logs show your access codes, Sarah. Who's going to believe your word against electronic evidence?" "You could tell them the truth," I whispered. "You could explain that you have administrative override capabilities, that you could have used my codes." Patricia's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Why would I do that? Sarah, I've invested 18 years building my position at St. Mary's. I've saved that hospital more money than you'll make in your entire career. They need me. Even if it means I go to prison for something you did? You chose to stick your nose where it didn't belong." Her mask was slipping now, revealing the cold calculation underneath. "I warned you about the importance of loyalty, but you kept asking questions, kept snooping around." I wiped my eyes with a napkin, making sure the wire picked up every word. "Patricia, what if I could prove I never took those medications? What if I had some kind of evidence?" Her eyes sharpened dangerously. "What kind of evidence?" "I don't know, maybe security footage from other cameras? Or records showing the real distribution of those drugs?" I paused, then played my final card. "What if I knew about your meetings with Eddie in the parking garage?" Patricia went absolutely still. The coffee shop noise faded into background static as she stared at me with undisguised hatred. "You recorded me," she said flatly. I was scared. I didn't know what else to do. "Where are the recordings, Sarah?" "Somewhere safe." "But Patricia, I don't want to use them. I just want my life back. Maybe we could work something out." Patricia reached into her purse, and for a terrifying moment I thought she might pull out a weapon. Instead, she withdrew her phone and quickly typed a message. "Sarah," she said without looking up, "you have no idea what you've stumbled into. This is so much bigger than you understand." Through the coffee shop window, I saw Agent Reyes speaking urgently into her radio. Patricia's message had triggered something. Backup was already moving into position. "Those children were going to die anyway," Patricia continued, her voice now completely devoid of empathy. "At least their suffering served a purpose. Do you have any idea how much money moves through Vinny's network? How many people depend on that income?" I stared at her in horror. Even caught, even facing federal charges, she felt no remorse for torturing dying children. "Patricia Henley," Agent Reyes announced, appearing at our table with her badge displayed, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, healthcare fraud, and child endangerment." As the handcuffs clicked around Patricia's wrists, she looked at me with pure venom. "You have no idea what you've done, Sarah. No idea who you're really dealing with." But I did know. I was dealing with someone who'd chosen money over mercy, who'd built wealth on the screams of innocent children. And now, finally, she was going to pay for every single one of those screams. The FBI raids yielded evidence beyond what anyone had anticipated. Agent Reyes called me that evening with updates that left me shaking. "Sarah, we found Patricia's financial records hidden in a safety deposit box under her maiden name. She's made over $180,000 in the past 18 months selling stolen medications. But that's not the worst part." I gripped the phone tighter. "What else?" "We found a ledger documenting which patients she targeted. She kept detailed notes on family income levels, insurance coverage, and language barriers. She specifically selected children whose parents were least likely to complain effectively to administration. The methodical cruelty of it made me sick. Patricia hadn't just been stealing randomly, she'd been systematically targeting the most vulnerable families, calculating which children's suffering would go unnoticed. "There's something else," Agent Reyes continued. "Director Coleman tried to destroy files when he saw our agents arriving. We recovered fragments showing Patricia wasn't the only one. 3 other department heads had been skimming expensive medications for at least 2 years. My legs gave out and I collapsed onto my couch. How many children? Agent Reyes, how many kids have been suffering while their medications got sold? We're still investigating, but based on inventory discrepancies, we estimate over 400 incidents of withheld or delayed pain relief across multiple departments." Her voice was grim. "Sarah, without your documentation, this would have continued indefinitely. 400 incidents. 400 times a sick child cried in agony while their stolen medication enriched these monsters." The next morning brought another devastating revelation when Jake called with information about Dr. Morrison's involvement. "Sarah, remember how Dr. Morrison publicly praised Patricia's cost-effective protocols? I found email chains between Morrison and 3 pharmaceutical sales reps discussing kickbacks for reducing medication usage in pediatric oncology. I felt like the floor was falling away beneath me. She knew. Dr. Morrison knew Patricia was withholding medication and she supported it because it saved money? Worse than that. Morrison was getting bonuses based on reduced pharmaceutical spending. She had direct financial incentive to let children suffer. Jake's anger was palpable through the phone. The FBI is expanding their investigation to include Morrison and possibly the entire administrative structure. That afternoon, I received an unexpected call from Maria Martinez, Emma's mother. Through broken English and tears, she tried to thank me for what I'd done. "Miss Sarah, I see on news. Nurse Patricia arrested. You helped catch her?" Her voice cracked with emotion. "My Emma, she hurt so much those nights. I begged for medicine, but Patricia say no. I think maybe I do something wrong, maybe I not deserve help for my baby." The guilt in Maria's voice destroyed me. This woman had blamed herself for her daughter's unnecessary suffering, thinking somehow she wasn't worthy of compassion for her dying child. Maria, none of this was your fault. Patricia was stealing Emma's medication. You did nothing wrong, nothing. Emma want to see you when you come back to hospital. She say you hold her hand when Patricia not give medicine. She remember kindness. After hanging up, I sobbed for 20 minutes straight. Not just for Emma and Maria, but for every family that had suffered while thinking they deserved less care, less compassion, less basic human decency. That evening, Agent Reyes delivered news that would change everything about how we understood the scope of this conspiracy. Sarah, Patricia's talking. She's trying to negotiate a plea deal by providing information about the larger network. Agent Reyes paused significantly. According to her testimony, similar operations are running at 4 other hospitals in the region. St. Mary's wasn't an isolated case, it was part of a coordinated system. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Hundreds more children, suffering needlessly while their medications funded organized crime across multiple hospitals. How long? I whispered. How long has this been happening? Based on financial records, at least 5 years. Maybe longer. 5 years of systematic torture of innocent children, all for money. But Patricia's cooperation also meant something else. The investigation was about to get much larger, and much more dangerous. 2 weeks after Patricia's arrest, I thought the worst was behind us. The children were finally receiving proper pain management, the hospital had implemented new oversight protocols, and the FBI investigation was expanding to other facilities. I was preparing to return to work when Agent Reyes called with news that changed everything. Sarah, we have a problem. Vincent Torino posted bail yesterday, and Patricia's cooperation agreement just fell through. My blood turned to ice. What do you mean it fell through? She recanted her testimony about the other hospitals. Claims she made everything up to get a lighter sentence. Her new lawyer, a very expensive one that appeared out of nowhere, is arguing prosecutorial misconduct and trying to get the entire case dismissed. I sank into my kitchen chair, processing the implications. Someone got to her. That's our assumption. The lawyer is Marcus Webb. He's represented 3 of Torino's associates in the past 2 years. Always gets charges reduced or dismissed through technicalities. Agent Reyes paused. Sarah, there's something else. Patricia made bail this morning. Terror shot through me. She's out? How is that possible? She's a flight risk and Webb argued that she's a respected healthcare professional with deep community ties. The judge set bail at $500,000, and somehow she posted it within 6 hours. $500,000. On a nurse's salary, even with her stolen profits, Patricia shouldn't have had access to that kind of money unless someone else was funding her defense. Agent Reyes, am I safe? If Patricia's working with Torino's people and she knows I'm the one who... We're arranging protective custody until the trial. Pack a bag for at least 2 weeks. A marshal will pick you up in an hour. As I threw clothes into a suitcase, my phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello, Sarah. Patricia's voice was calm, almost pleasant. I hope you're proud of yourself. My hand started shaking. How did you get this number? You've caused quite a bit of trouble for people who don't appreciate trouble. The hospital board is furious. Their insurance premiums are going to triple because of your little investigation. Director Coleman lost his job. Dr. Morrison is facing federal charges. Good, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. They deserve everything they get for what they did to those children. Patricia's laugh was cold. Those children were going to die anyway, Sarah. All we did was make their final months profitable instead of wasteful. But you destroyed something beautiful. Beautiful? Patricia, you tortured dying kids for drug money. I provided necessary medications to people who needed them while implementing cost-effective healthcare protocols. It was elegant. Efficient. And now it's gone because one naive little nurse couldn't mind her own business. I heard a car door slam in the background of her call. Patricia, where are you? Close enough. Sarah, you should know that some people are very unhappy with the problems you created. Very unhappy. Mistakes happen to people who cause this kind of disruption. The line went dead. Through my apartment window, I saw a black sedan parked across the street that hadn't been there 10 minutes earlier. I called Agent Reyes immediately. Patricia just threatened me, and there's a car outside that. The marshal is 2 minutes away. Lock your doors and stay away from the windows. As I crouched in my hallway, listening for footsteps on the stairs outside my apartment, I realized this fight was far from over. Patricia's release meant the people behind this operation, whoever had enough money to post her bail and hire elite lawyers, were prepared to protect their interests by any means necessary. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Some problems solve themselves. Others require more direct intervention. The war for those children's lives had just entered a much darker phase. The U.S. Marshal, Deputy Williams, moved me to a safe house in Millbrook, a nondescript ranch home 40 minutes outside the city. For 3 days, I lived in protective limbo while Agent Reyes worked to rebuild the case against Patricia and her associates. On Thursday morning, everything changed again. Sarah, we've got a break, Agent Reyes said during our daily check-in call. One of Torino's dealers, Eddie Castellano, the guy from your recordings, wants to flip. He's scared that Patricia's release means someone's planning to clean house. I gripped the phone tighter. What's he offering? Financial records going back 3 years. Names of other hospital contacts. And here's the big one, he claims Patricia wasn't just selling to Torino's crew. She was also supplying a doctor who runs an illegal pain clinic in Riverside County. Dr. Richard Novak. Even through the encrypted call, Agent Reyes' voice dropped when she spoke his name. Novak's operation is sophisticated, fake prescriptions, insurance fraud, the works. But he needed genuine hospital-grade medications to maintain credibility with his patients. According to Eddie, Patricia was his primary supplier. My stomach churned as I processed this information. So while children were screaming in agony at St. Mary's, their stolen morphine was being sold to drug addicts at some illegal clinic? It gets worse. Eddie says Novak specifically requested pediatric formulations because they're harder to trace and command premium prices on the black market. Patricia was literally stealing liquid morphine designed for dying children and selling it to the highest bidder. I had to sit down. The depth of Patricia's cruelty kept expanding beyond what I thought was possible. Agent Reyes, how many other hospitals was she connected to? How many more children? Eddie claims at least 6 facilities across 3 counties. If he's telling the truth, we're looking at a conspiracy involving dozens of healthcare workers and hundreds of victimized patients. She paused significantly. Sarah, Eddie wants to meet with you. What? Why? He says Patricia bragged about breaking nurses who tried to interfere with her operation. He thinks she's done this before, identified whistleblowers, and had them silenced or discredited. He wants to tell you something about a nurse named Jennifer Walsh who worked at Riverside General 2 years ago. Jennifer Walsh. The name hit me like a physical blow. Jenny, my Jenny who'd helped me document Patricia's crimes, had mentioned her sister Jennifer, a pediatric nurse who died in a car accident in 2021. Agent Reyes, I whispered, Jenny Walsh, one of my allies at St. Mary's, her sister Jennifer died in a suspicious car accident. Single vehicle, late at night, no witnesses. Silence stretched across the phone line. Sarah, Eddie specifically mentioned that Patricia had a problem with a nurse named Jennifer Walsh at Riverside General. Said she was asking too many questions about medication discrepancies right before she died. The implications crashed over me like ice water. Had Patricia been responsible for Jennifer's death? Had she murdered a nurse who tried to expose her operation? I need to meet with Eddie, I said firmly. If Patricia's killed before, if there are other victims. It's too dangerous. Torino's people are actively looking for Eddie, that's why he wants to cooperate. The meet would have to be tomorrow night, and we'd need you to verify his information about Patricia's methods. That afternoon, Deputy Williams received an encrypted message that made him immediately move me to a different location. As we drove through suburban neighborhoods toward the new safe house, he explained why. Intelligence suggests Torino's crew has been monitoring federal communication channels. They may have identified the Millbrook location. His eyes constantly scanned the mirrors as he spoke. Sarah, these people have resources we're still trying to understand. Military-grade surveillance equipment, contacts inside law enforcement, possibly even federal agencies. How is that possible? Drug money buys a lot of corruption. Torino's operation generates millions annually, enough to purchase information, silence witnesses, eliminate threats. He turned into the driveway of another anonymous house. The people protecting Patricia aren't just criminals. They're organized criminals with sophisticated networks. That evening, alone in the new safe house, I made a decision that terrified me. I called Jenny Walsh directly, despite explicit instructions not to contact anyone from my previous life. Sarah? Oh my God, where are you? Everyone's saying you disappeared, that you might be in witness protection or... Jenny, I need to ask you about your sister Jennifer. About how she died. The phone went silent for nearly 30 seconds. When Jenny spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. Why are you asking about Jennifer? Because I think Patricia might have been involved. I think Jennifer discovered something at Riverside General, and I think Patricia had her killed to protect the operation. Jenny's sharp intake of breath told me everything I needed to know. Sarah, Jennifer called me 3 days before she died. She was terrified. She said she'd found evidence that someone was stealing medications from terminal patients, and that when she tried to report it, her supervisor told her to keep quiet or she'd lose her job. What kind of evidence? Financial records. Video footage. Jennifer was smart, she documented everything just like you did. Jenny's voice cracked. The night she died, she was driving to meet with a federal investigator. She never made it to that meeting. As Jenny spoke, I realized Patricia's network had been operating for years, silencing anyone who threatened their profits. Jennifer Walsh hadn't died in an accident, she'd been murdered for trying to protect children the same way I was. And now, with Eddie's cooperation and my testimony, we finally had a chance to expose the full scope of their crimes and get justice for Jennifer, for Emma, for every child who'd suffered while these monsters profited from their pain. But first, I had to survive long enough to tell their stories. The meeting with Eddie was set for Friday night at a truck stop outside Cedar Falls. Agent Reyes had chosen the location specifically, multiple exit routes, good sight lines, and enough ambient noise to mask our conversation from potential surveillance. Remember, Deputy Williams briefed me as we drove through the darkness, Eddie's scared. He's been Torino's dealer for 6 years, and he knows what happens to people who betray the family. He's only talking because he thinks Patricia's release means they're planning to eliminate loose ends. At 11:47 p.m., we pulled into the parking lot behind a convoy of unmarked federal vehicles. Eddie was already there, a thin man in his 40s chain-smoking beside a rusted pickup truck. Even from a distance, I could see his hands shaking. Agent Reyes made the introductions quickly. Eddie, this is Sarah Chen, the nurse who recorded your transactions with Patricia. Sarah, Eddie has information about other victims of this operation. Eddie's eyes darted constantly between the tree line and the interstate, as if expecting Torino's men to emerge from the shadows. Miss Chen, I gotta tell you something about your friend Patricia. She ain't just some greedy nurse who got in over her head. She's been doing this for 8 years, maybe longer. He pulled out a crumpled notebook filled with dates and dollar amounts. See, I keep records too. Gotta track what I owe Vinny, what I'm bringing in. Patricia's been my most reliable supplier since 2016. But here's what you don't know, she had help. What kind of help? There's this doctor, Dr. Rebecca Chen, no relation to you, I checked, works at Presbyterian Hospital downtown. She's been feeding Patricia information about which kids are terminal, which families won't fight back when medications get delayed. They coordinate their thefts based on patient prognosis. My blood ran cold. You're saying they specifically target children who are expected to die? Eddie nodded grimly. Patricia calls it optimizing resources. She gets lists of kids with less than 6 months to live, and those are the ones who get their pain meds diverted. Figure the families are too devastated to complain, and if the kid dies, there's no ongoing witness to the suffering. Agent Reyes leaned forward intently. Eddie, do you have proof of this coordination between Patricia and Dr. Chen? Text messages. Financial transfers. Patricia pays Dr. Chen $500 for each patient list, plus 20% of profits from medication stolen from those specific kids. He pulled out a second phone, scrolling through dozens of messages. Look at this one from March 15th. New terminal admits in room 318 and 322. Projected survival 4 to 6 weeks. Morphine and fentanyl protocols established. Payment pending usual terms. I stared at the message, feeling sick. Emma Martinez had been in room 318 in March. They'd been planning to steal her pain medication before she'd even finished her admission paperwork. Eddie, I said carefully, what happened to Jennifer Walsh? The nurse at Riverside General who died in 2021? His face went pale. How do you know about Jennifer? Because her sister works with me. Because Jennifer was investigating the same kind of theft you're describing. Eddie was quiet for nearly a minute, smoking nervously and checking the parking lot. Finally, he spoke. Jennifer wasn't supposed to die. That wasn't the plan. What was the plan? Patricia had this system for dealing with problem nurses. First, she'd try to transfer them to different departments. If that didn't work, she'd plant evidence to get them fired. Jennifer was supposed to get framed for drug theft, just like Patricia tried to do to you. Agent Reyes interrupted. So what went wrong? Jennifer was smarter than Patricia expected. She'd already copied all the financial records and hidden them somewhere Patricia couldn't find. When the frame-up failed, Jennifer threatened to take everything to the FBI. Eddie's voice dropped to a whisper. That's when Vinny got involved personally. Meaning what? Meaning Vinny doesn't allow threats to his income stream. He told Patricia the Jennifer problem needed a permanent solution. Eddie crushed his cigarette under his boot. 2 days later, Jennifer's car went off Route 9 at 2 a.m. Single vehicle accident, no witnesses. The confirmation hit me like a physical blow. Jennifer Walsh had been murdered for trying to protect children, just like I was trying to do. Eddie, Agent Reyes said urgently, are you willing to testify that Vincent Torino ordered Jennifer Walsh's murder? Lady, I'm willing to testify that the sky is purple if it keeps me alive long enough to see Patricia and Vinny behind bars. He handed her the phone containing the text messages. But you better move fast. Word on the street is that Vinny's planning to eliminate everyone connected to the St. Mary's investigation. And that includes her. He pointed directly at me. The final confrontation came at dawn on Monday morning, when federal agents simultaneously raided 17 locations across 3 counties. I watched from the command center as Agent Reyes coordinated the largest healthcare fraud takedown in state history. Sarah, we're getting confirmation from all sites, she announced as reports flooded in through her radio. Patricia's house, Dr. Rebecca Chen's clinic, 6 hospital administrators, and Vinny Torino's entire network. Everyone's in custody. The evidence was overwhelming. Eddie's testimony had led to financial records documenting $2.3 million in stolen medications over 5 years. Bank records showed Patricia had purchased 3 rental properties and a boat with her illegal profits. Most damning of all, we'd recovered Dr. Rebecca Chen's patient files, detailed lists of dying children with notes about medication optimization opportunities. But the moment that broke me was when Agent Reyes showed me Jennifer Walsh's hidden evidence cache, recovered from a storage unit registered under her maiden name. Jennifer documented everything, Sarah. Patricia's operation, the administrative cover-ups, even recorded conversations with Dr. Morrison about reducing pain medication costs. Agent Reyes spread the files across the table. Jennifer died protecting children she'd never met, trying to expose the same evil you uncovered. 3 hours later, I stood in Patricia's interrogation room, watching her face the weight of her crimes. Gone was the composed professional who'd terrorized dying children for profit. In her place sat a broken woman in an orange jumpsuit, finally understanding that her empire of cruelty had collapsed. 17 counts of conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, 12 counts of child endangerment, 8 counts of healthcare fraud, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder in Jennifer Walsh's death, the prosecutor read. Mrs. Henley, do you understand the charges against you? Patricia's voice was barely audible. I understand. Given the cooperation of multiple witnesses and the extensive financial evidence, the state is prepared to offer a plea agreement. Life in prison without parole, in exchange for your full cooperation in identifying other participants in this conspiracy. For the first time since I'd known her, Patricia looked directly at me. Those children were going to die anyway, she whispered. I didn't change their outcomes. No, I replied, standing up from the observation chair, but you changed how they died. You made their final months torture instead of comfort. You stole their dignity along with their medication. Patricia closed her eyes. I accept the plea agreement. 6 months later, I returned to St. Mary's Children's Hospital as the new director of pediatric patient advocacy, a position created specifically to prevent anything like Patricia's operation from happening again. The first child I visited was Emma Martinez, now in remission and cancer-free. Miss Sarah, she called out when she saw me, running across the playroom with the energy only an 8-year-old could have. Mama says you're the reason the medicine always comes when I hurt now. Her mother, Maria, approached with tears in her eyes. Miss Sarah, because of you, my daughter lives without pain. Because of you, other children will never suffer like Emma suffered. That evening, as I walked through the pediatric oncology ward during the night shift, I listened to something I'd never heard during Patricia's reign, silence. Not the silence of children too weak to cry, but the peaceful silence of children sleeping comfortably, their pain properly managed, their families confident that their suffering mattered to the people caring for them. Jennifer Walsh's sister Jenny now works beside me as a patient advocate. Vincent Torino received 40 years in federal prison. Dr. Rebecca Chen lost her medical license and received 25 years. Director Coleman and Dr. Morrison were sentenced to 15 years each. And Patricia Henley, the monster who built wealth on the screams of innocent children, will spend the rest of her life in a maximum security prison, never again able to cause suffering to anyone. The evil I witnessed was finally, completely, and permanently destroyed.